Peace and blessings, family. Welcome to the Mbongi, the public space where Africans can gather and exchange wisdom that will improve our lives and contribute to the forward flow of human history. I am your host, Brother asarimhotep, and today's discussion is titled Egypto-Bantu Big Bang Theory. Put some respect on African cosmologies. And so this is a continuation of a series of conversations, and we'll get more into that when we return in just a moment.
You see, I have a lot of things that's on my mind, and I would like to let them out. Look, I see reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you. Okay.
And welcome back. Welcome back. As stated, I am your host, Brother asarimhotep. Today is Tuesday, January the 11th, 2022, and we are starting off the year on a scientific note, and the discussion centers around essentially a question of, are Africans capable of coming up with complex scientific hypotheses and theories without the aid of Europeans? And so it may not necessarily be worded that way when, we go into the details of what sparked this conversation, but essentially this is the fundamental question. So how this conversation started with our good brother Inherit Sean. And Sean, hold on one second, let me find his text here. Inherit Sean P, part of the Mosi warrior clan, who wrote the book What SARS-CoV-2 Taught Me. And we had him on the show, so you can visit the archives and type in interview Inherit Sean P, and it will come up for those of you who are not familiar with our good brother. So he was on the Pseudo Killers podcast on YouTube and had a discussion. I don't know if he had the discussion initially on that channel or on his own channel, where he was discussing the late Dr. Fukiao, Kimbwadinde Kiabunseki Fukiao, out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and his book African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo, which was published in 2001. Actually, that's the second edition. The first one was published in the 70s, titled A Book Without Title, actually. And so it was an expanded edition that ultimately became African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo. And in that text, the initiated scholar, Dr. Fukiao, discussed and articulated the Congo cosmology as told by the Bakongo people of the DRC. And it kind of overlaps with with what you find among the Luba, which is a kind of brother or cousin, language in the same area. So they're kindred cultures and languages, but primarily Bantu Congo uh, in that particular area. And so when Sean saw or read, I should say, the cosmology of Fukiao, he came to the conclusion that it mirrored and paralleled major aspects of modern Big Bang Theory, which is part of, one of the major hypotheses concerning the origin of the known universe in the standard model of astrophysics, cosmological studies. And so I guess the pseudo killers got wind of the conversation and decided to have a show, just summarily dismissing the argument of Brother Sean. And so I think at the same time, we on our channel here were having just an open discussion. So whatever the community had on their mind, they would join the panel or ask questions in the chat, and we had a conversation. So Brother Sean comes on the channel and he provides just a little bit of background on the conversation that he just had on the pseudo killer show. And so later on that week, I had a conversation with our good brother, Black Panther, aka Brother Ben, also one of the creator of the. Do I have the journal here? I'm not sure I do. I don't think I have the journal here, but also of the Masi Warrior clan, and he essentially, has come to the same conclusion as Sean in regards to the cosmology and its relationship to Big Bang, or its parallels with Big Bang theory in modern astrophysics. And hearing what they had to say, of course, I agreed with the perspective in which they had. And the and so I came on the show and presented my argument essentially. And it appears that on the pseudo killer show that they're having a hard time grasping exactly how science works, and in terms of the created the hypothesis stage, in terms of observations in nature, and then logical deductions, and then the ability to make predictions, and for the hypotheses to be scientifically testable, and how sometimes those hypotheses are not able to be tested at the present moment because the technologies don't exist. And so, but as time goes on, when the technologies get a lot more sensitive and bigger and more objective, then certain types of experiments can be done, and certain conclusions or hypotheses can be falsified or validated, and or improved upon, over time. And that's just how science works. And so from the looks of the conversation that we had on the program, they just didn't understand this. And so they even reworded the initial question in the conversation to make it seem as if or asking us, did they understand the Big Bang? Meaning, did they understand the Big Bang, talking about the ancient Africans, in the same way and at the same level that modern cosmologists do? That was never the conversation. That's a totally different conversation, and no one agrees that that is in fact the case here. So it's not even an argument. They're arguing with themselves and then making up um, making up arguments to argue against, and then putting those words in other people's mouths. And of course, that's what we don't do here. So they continue to have the conversations, without us on the program. And so what I wanted to do on this program was just to bring another aspect, of the conversation to its fulfillment. And so, like, to really fully, dive deep into this would take a series. If we're doing it video wise, would take a series of videos, and in a structured manner. And so maybe for the future we can do that. But today I just want to take a little time and give the basics on how the Congo cosmology does in fact parallel major aspects of the Big Bang Theory, and so does the ancient Egyptian. But what I'm also adding to this is the continuity between the ancient Egyptian narrative and the Congo narrative, and how, for example, the study of linguistics helps us to get deeper into the fundamental arguments that they are making in the so-called mythologies. And so before I do that, I just want to give a shout out to each and every one of you who have joined the conversation. So peace to Sunjiata, Ata, Kakra, and Zombie. Live from planet Earth is in the building, and the man of the hour, Brother Inherit Kalfani Sean P, aka Sean P. Uh, Brother Chavez, H Town in the building. Brother Robert Rand, NYC in the building. Omar Shaw, Omar Reed. I'm sorry. And Donnie Williams, one of our Patreon members, is in the building. Teti Ursama Ross Neferu is in the building. And thank you, Sister Tamika, for your presence as always. And she is reminding each and every one of you to thumb up the video, like and share, and also to support the channel, either via Cash App or um, through the chat box. You can do it as well there. And we'll get more into that and why this is so important, this conversation today. So thank you, Sister Tamika, for being here. I Run and Gun is in the building. uh, Delaware in the house, and Mark Logan, Hotep to you too. Peace and blessings. Anointed, Sadat Amin Ra. Can you talk about the picture of Newton Geb as well? Maybe in a future talk, but I don't have it on my slides at the moment. So I will definitely keep that in mind. Kadeem Stewart is in the building. Itiem Hotep to you as well. Be Styled Kennels, peace and blessings to you. Sister Anusha Hardiman, H-Town in the building. Thank you very much. And Sister Emmy Kett has made it through all the way from somewhere in Eastern Europe by way of Kenya in the building. And Strife has made it to the chat. Peace and blessings to you, Fitz. And Amin Ra is in the building. Love the name. And who am I missing? Ofebea Abafari. I would like to learn more about the ideographic writing and its use on the continent and the diaspora. That is a good subject, and please send me an email or an inbox message on Facebook to remind me, and I'll do a show about that. Thank you for the suggestion. And let me see, Brother Mathis has made it in the building. Peace to Chris. And OG Gorilla is in the building. It's been a minute. NYC in the building. Ty Lackey has made it. Hotep to you and the family. Anthony Richardson, peace to you. And Kali Hercules, or Coley Hercules, help me to pronounce it correctly. Thank you for being in the building. Ivan Vasquez Deles. I am totally ruining that last name, but you're going to help me pronounce it correctly. So help me out there so I can look victorious when pronouncing these names. And Lawrence Sherd is in the building. Thank you. Rick X Factor Duval, peace and blessings. Roderick Frizzell, what's up to you? Sister Julanda Zachary is in the building from my home state, my birth state of Florida. And Kwame is showing love all the way from the UK. And so it's kind of early from our normal conversations for the UK. So I appreciate you uh, coming through and joining the conversation. And lastly, Thurman Meredith, Texas baby in the house already. So we will get started with our conversation. So I do appreciate each and every one of you for joining the conversation. So what I'm going to do is uh, share my screen, and we will do the damn thing, as we say in my remote village of Third Ward, Texas. Let me do a full screen. I'll do a full screen this time. So what I want to do is start here. We're going to start from the beginning. So actually, this slideshow is I've expanded, I've added some slides and everything, but we've had this conversation before in Harlem way back in August of 2015 for Sa Nether. And the title of my presentation, I forgot who we were debating, the Amon Ra squad we were debating. And so the title of the program, excuse me, my presentation was The African Foundation of Modern Evolution and Cosmology and the Problematics of Paradigm Within Intelligent Design. So I remember now it was basically science, African science versus intelligent design, and why intelligent design is fundamentally flawed as an explanation of the creation of the universe and all of that. So I'm going to use some of the slides that I used there, and then of course some I added just for this conversation. And so I want to start off the conversation with Dr. James P. Allen, who is the author of the famous text Middle Egyptian, an introduction to the language and culture of hieroglyphs. And I want to shout out Brother Wujawu and Sister Emmy Ket. On their program yesterday, they were talking about essentially kind of this topic, and they brought a citation, one that I have, and forgot to even look there in reference, but it's an important citation in regards to the fundamental question that we are asking ourselves today. And so remember that our conversation is titled The Egypto-Bantu Big Bang Theory, and to put some respect on African cosmologies. And so, starting on page 147, he has the book is for learning how to read and write the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs from the Middle Kingdom, right? And so, but interspersed in these lessons are these small essays on various different topics. So essay 12 starts the conversation on the creation of the world. As a matter of fact, James P. Allen has a book. It's blue. It's called Genesis something, but it's talking about ancient Egyptian creation stories. So if you have a chance to get that text, I highly recommend that you get it. So now he states, the Hermopolitan system discussed in essay 11, and Hermopolitan or Hermopolis is a city in ancient Egypt. So different nomes or different cities or villages in many respects, some of them had different cosmologies or different aspects of a singular cosmology that that was told in those particular areas. So you have the Hermopolitan creation narrative, and now we're going to discuss the Heliopolitan from Heliopolis. So the Hermopolitan system discussed in essay 11 seems to have been primarily concerned with the background of the creation, describing what the universe was like before creation began. The actual process of creation was the interest of theologians in another great Egyptian city, Heliopolis, near the site of modern Cairo, which is in the northern part of Egypt, uh, you know, close to the Delta. So Egyptian creation accounts do not seem to have envisaged the possibility of something being created from nothing. So in cosmology, we talk about, or theology, we talk about this in terms of creation ex nihilo, and so we, they're not, the ancient Egyptians were not a people, and Africans in general are not a people that believe that there was nothing, an absolute void and nothing, and then all of a sudden there was creation, or there was God and there was nothing, which is kind of impossible, and then he just created out of nothing. So instead, and I have this highlighted for a reason, they describe how everything in the world, all its elements and forces, came from a single source, much like the primordial singularity in the Big Bang Theory of modern physics. The original source of all things was known as the god Atum, Itimu, seen here, usually written as Timu, as you see in the hieroglyphs there. The god's name means finisher, which is debatable right there, and refers to the fact that Autumn finished up as the world is finished up as the world. So we're talking about the evolution and of Atum, how Atum was the singularity and became differentiated and became the world of which we know today. So that's what he's talking about. In recognition of this nature, Atum is called Neb Tim, or Lord of Totality. See the example in section 12.16.4, or more often, Nebetjer, Lord of the Limits. Right? Now, why is this important here when this scholar, Professor Dr. James P. Allen, who has written about creation stories in his book Genesis and other texts, and who's writing a textbook on how to read and write the hieroglyphs, says here, instead, they describe everything in the world, all its elements and forces came from a single source, much like the primordial singularity in the Big Bang Theory of modern physics. So he's already recognizing a parallel, because in the standard model of modern astrophysics, what we're talking about in terms of the Big Bang is that at some point in time in the development of this universe, that the all the matter and things were condensed into this infinitely dense and hot state or point, which eventually exploded and expanded, or space developed and expanded, and the through like four major epochs developed what we know as the universe today. But it starts from this singularity, which is hypothesized by a number of modern physicists. There are other, alternative hypotheses concerning the origins of the universe, and maybe we'll get into them now. But when it comes to the concept of the Big Bang Theory, this is fundamental to the theory. So it's not just the crazy rantings of brother Any Harrod, Sean P, brother Cal Fani. It's not the rantings of brother Black Panther, aka brother Ben. It's not the rantings of brother asarimhotep, aka Optimus Prime. That this is something that is recognized, because they only recognize stuff when white people say stuff, so maybe because this white professor who you can't argue is an Afrocentrist and trying to be a blackologist, maybe it'll make sense then. But let's continue. So he continues, before the creation, Atum existed from all time within the primeval waters in a state of inert potentiality, as the text describe it, alone with Nu in inertness and in his egg. The creation happened when Atum evolved into the world, becoming the finite space of light and life within the infinite ocean, the universal ocean. This process is explained both as Atum's self evolution. The god is often called Keper Jeseph, he who evolved on his own, and by the typical Egyptian metaphor of creation, aka birth. So Atum is, this is why his the root of his name means complete or to be complete. He's the completely complete being. And this is going to be very fundamental later on in our conversation. So, because the Egyptians do not believe in creation ex nihilo, it was an evolution of the pre-existing primordial substance, and the creative aspects of it become the sun gods and things of this nature and all these other different deities or forces of nature that are responsible for the evolution and continuing evolution and expansion of the universe and the diversity that we see in existence. So remember from our previous conversations that for the Africans, God is existence itself. And this is just another example of this paradigm, this worldview, this framework for articulating our understanding of existence and theology in the African world. So on page 149, he states, although it is explained in general terms, the Heliopolitan, view of the creation is therefore less a step-by-step account than a kind of Egyptian Big Bang Theory in which all of creation happened at once in the moment when Atum evolved into the world and time itself began. One Middle Kingdom text actually reflects this view of creation when it describes Shu as the one whom Atum created on the day that he evolved. So notice he's using this word Big Bang again. So he says it's not a step-by-step creation process like we would find in modern science, but a kind of Big Bang. Like we have our own Big Bang in ancient Kemet, in which all of creation happened at once in terms of an evolution of Adam, the complete being. And so again, you know, this idea, it is self-explanatory for those who have any kind of consciousness and understanding of modern, especially the standard model of cosmology, and of course African systems of thought and creation. And so this isn't an instance of blackology or or Africans trying to retro put Big Bang into history. The idea of an essential Big Bang existed before the modern Big Bang theory, just like the concept of the atom existed before Newtonian physics and Einstein. And so we already had our scientific testable hypotheses concerning the universe. But, you know, there are those of us who believe that, you know, these, when they see a deity and a personification like this, that we're thinking that some kind of human anthropomorphic being was sitting there creating, you know, with his hands and all. Like, you take these children's stories literally. That's not the case. You have to understand what the names of the deities mean, so you understand the relationship between the beings or objects and or processes involved in the narrative, and what exactly are they trying to state. And so now let's go into Fukiao's text, African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo, Principles in Life and Living. The very book, the 2001 publication that started all this madness, because Sean, brother Any Herod Calfani, aka Sean P, wants to start mess by educating black folks about black people, and trying to put respect on African cosmology. Because this brother dared, actually woke up that morning and chose violence, we are in the middle of these particular conversations. So we're going to continue the violence that brother Sean P started in these internet streets. We're going to form an Afro scientific gang, and we're going to roll up on all the ops who don't respect African cosmologies. And we're going, on some old school West Coast, break you off, fool. And just roll up on some Boys in the Hood Ricky with the information, with the double barrel hanging out of the window of the back seat. We're gonna have brother Black Panther as the getaway driver, in these intellectual drive-bys for people who's disrespecting the Afro cosmological hood that is, the wisdom of our ancestors. So all jokes aside, let's get it started. So the the primary discussion in terms of the essential creation as understood by the people of the Bantu Congo starts on page 17 and ends on page 22, or at least that's what I'm citing from in this text here. And so it's subtitled Congo Cosmology and Graphics. So you're going to see some graphic elements that kind of articulate or coincide with what is being discussed in the paragraphs. So he states a straight line, a skyline in Longa, Lukongolo, or a line with an empty circle in Bungi. In its middle is among the Bantu Congo, the symbol of emptiness, a world without visible life. That is the emptiness in Bongi, Mwasi, Pampa. The world in its beginning was empty. It was an Mbongi, an empty thing, a cavity without visible life. And so this is the graphic. And so if you know anything about Congo, they didn't have like very detailed pictographs and hieroglyphs like you see in ancient Kemet, but they chose to use shapes and lines to articulate these very fundamental ideas and philosophies that emerged out of the minds of the Bantu Congo. And there's a good book on Bantu signs and symbols. There's several of them, mostly in French, but there's one in English. And we had the author on the program, Dr. Bombaro, and I think it's just called like is it Bantu Cosmo or Congo Cosmographs? I'll get the name, and I'll remind y'all a little later. But here's the signs of the Mbongi. It's a circle with a line in Longa. That's what in Longa is word. It means line. in this invisible space. And it's saying that it's empty, but we're going to find out it is really not so empty. He says there are in the empty Mbongi with active forces that can blow up. And that's a typo in his because he says Mbongi, but it should be Mbongi. Mu Mbongi Yampa Mba Nwena Goto Zelinda Kahuka Kari Zena Moyo. Where there is emptiness and nothingness, act other unknown forces, invisible, of course. So while it is empty, it's really not empty. There are other unknown forces that emerge. And so this also sounds like another aspect of the standard model in cosmology, because we understand that there's no such thing as an absolute nothing, that there are where there is empty space, there is still stuff. And Dr. Krauss has a book, A Universe from Nothing, and he discusses how when there's nothing, there's really not nothing, as in terms of an absolute vacuum, but there are quantum fluctuations that emerge and come in and out of existence in these particular spaces. And if we have time, I'll show a picture of that. So he says, man's life is surrounded by diverse forces and ways which govern it like an Mbongi. So now you're starting to see this emergence of this is of a hill or a mountain, and then a fire force inside, which will soon blow up. And if you know anything about the Atum or Ptah story, it's the exact same articulation, the exact same. And I'm going to show you just something a little later. He says, a fire force complete by itself, Kalunga. That's the name of the fire force. Emerged within the Mbongi, the emptiness, nothingness, and became the source of life. Moyo Wawo Muenza. And Moyo is that word for life and spirit. And Enza means world, and can also mean life on earth. That is the Kalunga, the complete force by itself. So this word Kalunga alludes to this idea of completeness. What did we say Atum means? Complete. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. But it's also a fire force. So how is Kalunga a fire force and also a meaning complete as well? We'll get into that. Fired up the Mbongi. So the Kalunga, the complete force by itself, fired up the Mbongi and overran, dominated it. The heated force of Kalunga blew up and down as a huge storm of projectiles. Kiembwadende. And what's interesting is this is actually his initiation name. And it's funny that his name, every aspect of his name, has to do with cosmology. Maybe that's a topic of discussion for another time. Producing a huge mass infusion. So he's citing himself way back in 1969 on this. Kalunga then became the symbol for force, vitality, and more. A process and principle of change. Kepper, all changes on the earth. And by cooling the mass infusion, solidified itself and gave birth to the earth in the process of cooling. The matter infusion produced water, whose rivers, mountains, etc. are the results. And so what we have here again is that from that empty quantum soup emerges the Kalunga, which was a complete being, but also a fire force that blew up and gave birth to the stars, planets, the earth, etc. And we continue. The world, Enza, became a physical reality floating in Kalunga, in the endless water within the cosmic space. Well, wait a minute. What do you mean floating in Kalunga? Wasn't Kalunga a fire force? And now, he's a completely complete being, but now he's an endless water source? What are they talking about here? Let's continue. Half emerging for terrestrial life and half submerging for submarine life in the spiritual world. The Kalunga, also meaning ocean, is a door and a wall between those two worlds. Kalunga became also the idea of immensity. Sincella Wayawa, that one can measure, an exit and entrance, a source and origin of life, potentialities, the principal God of change, the force that continually generates. Because Kalunga was the complete life, everything in touch with the earth shared that life, and it should be, became life after itself. That life appeared on the earth under all kinds of sizes and forms: planes, insects, animals, rocks, human beings, etc. And so we're getting a complete analysis. And so you got to understand Kikongo language to see what is going on here and why Kalunga is associated with all these different, apparently different ideas. The number of infinite mass and fusion particles that remain hanging in the upper space constituted what are known in human languages as sun, moon, stars, which are in realities other worlds. Man is called to live in certain of these worlds too. Kalunga, the principal god of change, is a force in motion. And because of that, our earth and everything in it is in a perpetual motion. Man himself is an object, Ma, in motion, for he is an around the path goer in his upper and lower world. And so some key terms that we must pay attention to is the word Nlonga, line, the Mbongi, empty circle, Kalunga, a fire force, Kalunga, completely complete being, Kalunga, ocean, waters, and Kalunga, principal god of change, a transformation. Now, how is Kalunga all of these different things? Notice that I have highlighted in the red the principal root consonants. And so what is happening here is that just like how the ancient Egyptians do, the Bakongo people take advantage of paronymy. And so I call this conceptual stacking. They take words that sound alike and they combine them in unique ways and personify them and make them one entity, and then create the narrative based on the relationship of the words that sound similar, right? So we have this word lunga. And so this is from the Dictionary and Grammar of the Congo Language, 1887. Lunga, to come to amount to be complete. This is why Kalunga is the completely complete being. In number and quantity, to be exact, just, accurate, right, perfect, expired, fulfilled, legally right, all come, all to hand, all present. This word is also used of the triumph of might over right, so that to overcome or to conquer in a fight is spoken of as lunga, whether the right was on the winning side or not, hence to win, a cause of palaver, to prove oneself right, and a palaver, master, to overcome, to beat or defeat. It is the root of the word lungisa, justification. Lunga, perfect, complete. Lunga, to mind, to make, to take care of, keep, watch, look after, to protect, to guard. Lunga, a smithy, a forge, a foundry, a gale, a blast, a strong wind. So because of the word lunga meaning a smithy or a forge, that's why Kalunga is also a fire force. And it describes the beginning as a cooking process. Lunga la kesa, to assemble, to gather together. Lungana, to gather together, to assemble. And this is essentially to create, to weave together. Lungalala, to be wary, cautious, prudent, skillful, far-seeing, discreet, judicious, shrewd, sly, cunning, crafty, prudence, discretion, wisdom, shrewdness, skillfulness. Lungalua, to fill, to overflow. It should be to fill, to overflowing. Heap up, put plenty, put much, many, amass, pour out. So when he expanded and overran the Mbongi, that is because the root lungu, lungulua, has to deal with this idea of immensity, of expanding, of overflowing, of overrunning, abundance. Then you have this word Kalunga, ocean, also imbu and mu. And that word, the prefix ka, well, that word ka is a prefix, or that morpheme ka is a prefix. And so note there's another word in the language, nlangu, meaning water. Lunga, light a, make or blow a fire. So the complete being, lunga from to be complete, and lunga meaning to light a or to make a fire. That's why Kalunga is also a fire force, and also the ocean and water. And so what you see here is the Africans combining these concepts together and conceptually stacking them to form the god Kalunga, which is just a characteristic, is just a singular name for all of these characteristics for which the word lunga is the root. And if you know anything about any of my work, a lot of it centers around how the linguistic phenomena of paronymy, which I have defined here on the left-hand side, creates culture in Africa historically. So what is paronymy? The first definition, a word that is derived from the same root as another word, but has a different syntactic use. For example, perilous and parlous. As an adjective, paronymus. The second definition, a word linked to another word by similarity of form. For example, preface is a paronym of Latin prefatio. And because the mere fact that the words look and sound similar, this is enough in the ancient African mind to synthesize this use, because in their mind, they must come from the same source. So all of these are just expansions of the original Lunga, even though they may have separate linguistic origins. And we find the same thing in ancient Egypt when it comes to Atum. So now, when I say that there's continuity here, Kalunga is Atum of ancient Kemet, and we can prove it. Why? Because this is the Mbongi, and here demonstration beats conversation. Gang, gang. And so pay attention to the roots that are the consonantal sequences that are highlighted and bolded in red. And so you see the sound correspondences in the third column on the right. And so Chikam is Egyptian. And of course, Congo is the language of the Bakongo people. So you have, for example, with Tim Tim, to collapse, to stagger in Egyptian. Then you have Langula, to knock or get knocked down with something, to knock down and break something that was high up or far off, hence to kill a beast at a long range. And sometimes that liquid L, that la 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 L, becomes nasalized as a result of being in proximity to another nasal. So that la becomes no. because you see the roundedness of the N, of the O, which helps to influence and be more like the N in the consonant that follows. So it's nongoka, to fall from an upright position, to be blown, to be knocked down, upset, etc. Nangona, to cause to fall from upright position, to blow, knock down, upset, tip over. And so you see the similarity in form in terms of the roots. So we go to the next line, timti, gone to the bottom. And then you have indinga, a decreasing, lessening, a fall, a going down. It's from the same root as the word above. But notice there's a rule in Bantu where if the L sound, this right here, is preceded by a nasal, an N, the L becomes D. So it's ndinga. And so the D sound is what we say in linguistics is an allophone in Kikongo of L. And N is an allophone of L in the Kikongo as well. See, these are all the same sounds essentially, but they're allophones. They're different sounds fundamentally, but because they all exist in the same place of articulation, they, depending upon the other phonetic environment, the phonetic environment it finds itself in, it'll sound closer to these other sounds. So atom, to be clogged, to be overflowing. Langa, to inundate, deluge, overflow, swamp, flood, cover up, bury, hide. And remember that there's another word, lunga, which means, or lungalala, lung, let me go back. Where's that word? Yeah, lungalua, to fill to overflowing, to heap up, put plenty, put much, many, amass, etc. And so so that's just a variation of this root here, langa. So to inundate, deluge, overflow, swamp, flood, cover up, bury, hide, etc. Timim, a wooden chest. Ndunga, drum, long conical wooden drum. Temer, troop of soldiers. Ndonga, crowd, multitude, host, great number of people, party, assembly, company, gang. Temer, a sacred tree in the third nome of Lower Egypt. Nlongwa, a tree yielding very good timber for planks. So we continue. Tim, to be complete, complete. Lunga, to come to amount to be complete, in a number, quantity, to be exact, just, accurate, right, perfect, expired, fulfilled legally, right, all come, all to hand, all present. So when I say that Kalunga and Atum are the same deity, we can demonstrate this linguistically. And we see fundamentally that the stories are the same in terms of their creation in ancient Kemet and in the Congo. And so we continue along this line. You'll see the same things. And let's go to the bottom here. Timmy, canal in the 19th nome of God. I forgot what that means in French. I mean in German. But item, a body of water. In Langu, water. Kalunga, ocean. And so again, sound correspondences to the right. And so this word here, to be complete, complete. Lunga, to come to amount to be complete, be exact, just, accurate. If y'all have followed my work, you know that this is also the same correspondence to the root in the word ma'at. And so we demonstrate and prove this here. So we know that M in the mat, it is not really mat, it's like many metakit, metarak, something like that, Nalinge, how we pronounce it, in Egyptian. But this word for eyebrow or plume, in Ninga, hair in Kikongo. Ma, salt water, water, in Langu, water. Notice the correspondences, the sound correspondences here. Right line, in longa, line. Remember that in longa line that we saw? That was the ma'atic line. My real, true, right, just, fair, correct, proper. Lunga, to be accurate, right, to be exact, perfect. What is this telling us here? That Atum and Ma'at are the same being. They're different dialectical variations of the same word. They have the same properties. And so, what is this also telling us from the Congo perspective? That Kalunga is Ma'at and is Atum. The proof is in the pudding. This is why ancient Kemet belongs to the Into universe and not some crazy migrations out of the Middle East. Because you can't do this with any language in the Middle East. You can't do this with any language in out of Europe. You can't do this with any language coming out of Eastern Asia. Only the African languages provide you this level of detail and systematic sound meaning correspondences, which helps to explain what is going on in the ancient Egyptian universe. Why? Because ancient Egypt belongs to the Into universe. Let's continue. And so the Ka and Kalunga, again, as I stated, is a prefix. And as I noted in Aluja Volume 2, as well as in Nesubiti, the Ka and Kalunga is best explained by Thilo Shadowberg in his article, Derivation, in the text, The Bantu Languages, where he states, the element Ka is usually synchronically analyzable as a class 12 noun prefix. Historically, it seems to have a second origin, therefore the Niger-Congo person marker, which also survives in Bantu as class 1 verbal prefix. This origin is manifest in its use to form names and name-like common nouns, which have no semantic link with the mainly diminutive class 12. There's a diminutive prefix ka as well, that is a class 12 prefix, and formerly by the frequent absence of the augment and or assignment of such nouns to class 1a, which is another typical feature of names. So he gives these examples. Kwanyama, this is a language in the zone R21. Kalunga, God. Kadina, namesake. And this word Dina is the equivalent and cognate to the ancient Egyptian word Ren, which means name. And so let's continue. Ka and the Posa and isiZulu languages, only surviving as an adverbial prefix to numerals and roots referring to time and space or honorific titles. And this is from Johnson's 1919 book on Bantu languages, page 316. And so we see this in action in Chiluba, another Bantu language out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so you have in Chiluba Fuka, to create, to invent, which gives us Bufuki, creation, creative action. Bufukibwa, created being. Chifukibwa, creature. Chifukilu, origin, native, original. Kafukele, creator, God. And Fuki, origin, source, strain. So you can see this prefix put at the beginning because it's an honorific title. It's like saying the word, putting the word netter in the front, which I can argue that this actually is. But that's a discussion for another time, how the word netter became a grammatical feature in Bantu. But I'm hoping that y'all are getting exactly what I'm saying. So now we go, this is the late Fukiao. And in his PhD dissertation, titled Digging Up the Past and Approach to Fundamental Education and Community Development, he tells you, he goes a little bit deeper into what Kalunga means, or how Kalunga is conceptualized. And so he says, the Bantu concept of God is a principle of Kalunga. So Kalunga is a principle, it's a title. therefore of welded opposite forces, positive and negative in one. The Muntu himself is seen in terms of these paired forces, Inkwa Luzungu. He is a being of paired organic forces. Some are said Lumoso or Lukinto, left or female, and other Lunene or Lubakala, right or male. Because all beings are resultant of the Kalunga, the complete forces made up of welded opposite forces of Kala and Luvimba, positive and negative in one. So he's saying the reason why that you have the complete or the all present exact definition of it, but he's saying that it's also conceptualized as a being that exists, having, just like a magnet has a negative and a positive, repelling, or a repelling and attractive force. It's two forces on a magnet, right? And no matter how many times you cut a magnet, when it's separated, each individual part will still have a negative, repellent, and positive attractive side to the magnet. And so this is what how Kalunga, this is what makes him complete, is because it is a force of complementary forces. And so when you have, for example, a particle, there exists an antiparticle. If you have an up quark, you also have a down quark. If you have a field, then you have a particle, because a particle is just an agitation of a field. Everything has its complement. And it's the totality of these complementarities, if I can even talk right this morning, that is labeled as Kalunga, because it is a principle. And so we go into the whole Kimoyo here in terms of the religion. So I'll skip this slide. So, but we see, for example, this comes from Ramesses the Sixth tomb in Egypt. And what I want y'all to focus on is this area here that I have. Oops, let's go back. That I have the mouse circulating. And so this is, it's a funerary text, but it also is a cosmological text, but it is also a birth, and a rebirth of the pharaoh and things. But in this section here is it talks about a cosmology. So you see Atum here, or Kalunga, or the masculine form of Ma'at, giving birth to the universe. And so make that there. So this is part of the wall of this particular tomb. And so if you have about $600, $700, you can get this text here, Egyptian Religious Texts and Representations, Volume 1, The Tomb of Ramesses the Sixth, list of plates, right? And so you can see the black and white photographs of that same section. So here's the center and kind of right side of that text, and you see these Netcherus here. Here's Keperu. Keper, I can't see what that is that's Wa something, and her or Tep. And I don't know if this is Emmy. I can't see. So I have to look at it closer. But you see Atum here, and you see it kind of spread out. We're going to get a little deeper into that. And so here's the left-hand side. And you know that when you see kind of snakes in creation, this represents, in many respects, time, or the concept of motion and entropy in the creative narrative in these particular texts. And so there's a text written in French titled, translating to English, "The Secrets of Hathor, Love and Eroticism and Sexuality in Pharaonic Egypt," by Du Rocher, which was published in 1999. And, in the text, he redraws and creates this image that you see here. And, he tells us a little bit about what's going on in this section. So he says, Adam, or excuse me, Adam, Atum, at the moment of creation, when the cosmic structure was beginning to be established with the appearance of the stars, the sun and moon, and the gods. Among them is the solar child on the threshold of birth. The 12 goddesses represent the 12 hours of the day and or night from the tomb of Ramesses VI, 20th dynasty. So this is what you see here. So this is the god Atum emerging out of the new where he was. So this is the hieroglyph for Atum here. And notice that it should be kind of Atum Ra, because you see the sun disk here. But what I want to point out is that, just like in the Karate Kid, film with the young Smith, Jalen Smith, and that line where he says everything is kung fu. When you're looking at ancient Egyptian walls and papyri, everything is meta nature, even the way that things are shaped. So this is an actual meta nature sign. So let's go back here. So when you see right here, this is a sign. This is a bowl or a cup, but it derives from a word with sek. So this is what you see here with sek, or with seket here, and with sek, which means to be wide, to be broad, breadth, broad, wide, extensive, monuments, riches, spacious, breadth, heavens, broad collar, bowl, cup, etc. And so you see the wide, expansive. But why is this important? Because here you see Atum, the completely complete being. Ma'at is the feminine form of this deity here, emerging out of the new, which I can demonstrate in a separate set of slides, that is cognate with Kikongo and Bongi, and then creates these are the 12 hours of day and night. So this is time. This is space time. In the 20th dynasty of ancient Egypt, this articulation of space time in the emergence of the universe from a fire force, from a dense singularity emerging the diversity, which becomes sun, stars, planets, etc., etc. Here in the ancient Egyptian text. And so you see other kind of variations of this idea. For example, the sun god Heru emerging out of the lotus plant, which is emerging out of the Mur Canal. And so this is supposed to, in some respects, represent the primordial hill, or it could just be a simple pathway, but it's also shaped in that same wasek, that expansion broadening. So you see not only that it comes from a particular point, but it's expanding in this direction. And so even in modern physics, well, look, and so we would see with the lotus flower, this is a picture of the lotus flower. So when you see the yellow inside, they looked at this as inspiration because of the color of the sun that emerges from this particular matter that emerges out of the waters and swamps. And so they use this to articulate a particular hypothesis on how the universe emerged out of the fluidity, which is known as the nu. And so we see this same type of graphic created. You type in Big Bang in Google Images, and all of what shows up is going to show up looking like this, like the hieroglyph of Wasek. In terms of space, they have to articulate it like this. And from the Big Bang, from this singularity and this infinitely dense, hot state. And so articulating the dense, hot state, the Egyptians used the sun as the symbol. So that is the hottest thing that we can think of in our conceptualization that would make sense to the layperson is the sun. So that's why we personify the sun, and that becomes the fire force which gave birth to the universe as we know it, in the beginnings of space-time itself. And so here's another from the National Geographic, from a 2014 article, and they give the timeline of the milliseconds. So this is what, 10 to the negative 32 milliseconds in terms of the inflation period, the so-called Big Bang, the emergence of the sun god Ra, the emergence of the sun god Atum Ra. What are we having here? You have to respect the ideas that are coming out of Africa. This is the reason why when James P. Allen, not Sean P., but James P. Allen, who looked at the text, noticed the similarities and the parallels to our modern Big Bang Theory. And not only that, when it comes to the fundamental building blocks of the universe and the emergence of the universe itself and the matter and things, they have to use the language that the Africans use to articulate that fundamental field in which emerges all of reality. And so I showed in my discussion with on the pseudo killers this clip, and so I won't show the clip, but I just typed out what he says at starting at approximately 9 minutes and 40 seconds into the discussion. This is Dr. David Tong, who's a theoretical physicist, and he is holding a conversation at Cambridge University titled Quantum Fields: The Real Building Blocks of the Universe. And in this, he says the best theories we have in terms of the building blocks of the universe tell us that the fundamental building blocks of nature are not particles, but something much more nebulous and abstract. The fundamental building blocks of nature are fluid-like substances which are spread throughout the entire universe and ripple in strange and interesting ways. This sounds exactly like the Nu, or the Kalunga, or the Atum, which is also a word for water. In this conversation, there's another YouTube video that you can get, and I can cite some other scientific texts, which I do in the upcoming book, Quantum Field Theory is African Inheritance. But I wanted to give y'all something that y'all don't have to buy the book just yet. Y'all can just go to YouTube and listen to the professors of physics discuss these concepts. So this is Dr. George Musser, and he is a contributing, editor to the Popular Science mag, and so he has a conversation on YouTube titled "What is a Field?" Instant Egghead number 42, which you see at the top here. So you can type that in and listen to his conversation. And so in the conversation, he states the following: a field is seen as a kind of fluidity that fills space. The analogy is not perfect, as a fluid, a literal fluid, has properties that a field lacks, but the metaphor is solid in the sense that a fluid is a continuous thing that fills space. A field doesn't consist of smaller particles. It doesn't move. Many types of fields, for example, magnetic, electric, gravitational, electron, Higgs, gluon, and quark, or he says there's many types of fields, for example, those fields. So fields can ripple like the surface of a pond, and that's how forces get transmitted. A particle can be thought of as the smallest ripple in a field. Particles can either be created or destroyed. They can either arise from or settle back down into the field, aka into the fluidity, aka into the Mbongi, into the Nu, into Ma'at. They're all variations of the same exact word. And so I'm going to end there. And what time is it there? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And so, wow, there's over 300 some odd comments. So, of course, I'm not going to be able to go through all of that. I will have to see later. And so let me see what y'all are talking about or asking here. I can't see. Let me send. So I appreciate you, Sister Mika. Fitz says, I get it. Miss Tiffany says, oh, is that Isis Akua thought? Miss Tiffany says, fire. Thank you. And thank you all for, listening and joining the conversation. And so again, I'm not going to be able to go through all of the comments. So I'm just going to thank all of y'all at once for your commentary and joining the discussion. He says the problem here is that you have two groups of people: those who study and put in practice what they study, demonstrate, versus those who show viewers the new information they came across this week. Indeed. And he says, C-Boy's asking me questions about some shit that was never said. Wow, exactly. And so I don't know. He says, atom does not mean water. See, now I just showed you where in the Egyptian language we can, let's do this. See, hold on. See, because some people just don't get it in their life. And Geb Osiris, he was one of those doubters, talking about, Kalunga is not cognate with Atum. And I just demonstrated otherwise. And you can bring any scholar, bring their mama if you want to, who is in opposition to what I'm able to demonstrate, and they will fail miserably on that front. Let me see here. So let me do this. See if we can. Let me see a body of water. So you can see here in the Waterbush entry. Let me share my screen. Because of course, I got citations for every and all things, as I stated. Let me see the Chrome tab. So let's do that. So you can see this is from the online thesaurus Lingua Egyptiae online dictionary of Egyptian, which is a combination of the Erman and Grappa Waterbush and other German dictionaries, as well as some English dictionaries. And so it's a searchable database. And the first entry when you put atom in is a body of water. Waterbush, book 1, page 144, entry number 8. I don't play games when it comes to this. I don't speculate. Demonstration beats conversation. I don't know what planet many of y'all come from. Let's see. Says, great show. Peace time, brother. Peace and blessings to you as well. H-Town in the building. Wayne Elliott says, good job. Asar dressed like he's about to rob a bank when he log off. Damn right. I told you we about to do an intellectual drive-by on people who don't respect African cosmology. Brother Sheffrin in the building, thank you for joining. This is Black BPM. Wow, so you think there's a way out of pseudo claim, saw versus no, both statements pseudo and wrong as hell. Actually, saw would have been better. I don't know what y'all talking about. You must be addressing someone specific. Says if you can't comprehend what a SAR is presenting, then you're in the wrong class. Indeed. It says R has been put on death row for the murders. It says neither are pseudo, and if you would read the book or watch the documentary and explain how they hypothesized there was a star behind there. So y'all continue the discussion and moved on to the Dogon. That's another discussion in of itself. But it's that question. He says, second question, in the Bantu languages, we don't have words for him, her, himself, herself, his, her, hers, but we use the unisex terms. Do the ancient Egyptians have words for him, her, himself, herself, his, her, he? Yes, they do. And if I don't know if Ujawu is in the building and would like to, or if Brother Sanjetti is in the building and wants to give out their information because they teach meta nature, and so you'll learn all about the pronouns of es, ku, chu, ku, all of these different forms of he, him, her. It's t is for she, and the w masculine for he as well. And he says, you mentioned James Gates Jr. in a recent open discussion. I have connected his work on Susi Adinkras, and Susi being supersymmetry to African cosmology also. Please expand on this if you can. Let me see. So I want to end this by 2:30 Eastern time. So I won't have too much time to go through it, but I will share my screen again and I will mention. So let's do that. And hold up, let me get that out of the way. And so that is, so let's go here. And so what he's talking about here is Dr. Sylvester James Gates and the Adinkras. And so Dr. James Gates is a theoretical physicist, and you can find his popular article in the physics world, and it's called Symbols of Power, Adinkras, and Nature of Reality. And so what he essentially talks about here is these equations that mirror self-correcting equations that a lot of us who are familiar with computer science understand, and of course those who are biologists, because nature has its own self-correcting codes. And so these self-correcting codes or algorithms are essential to this supersymmetry and the Adinkras. And the Adinkras, as he notes here, is a graphical representation that precisely encodes the mathematical relations between the members of supersymmetry families. These large in-color folded Adinkras represent complex systems of super differential equations. And so these are the equations, the logics in graphic form, computer simulated. And he noticed a couple things. And so notice that and I have to do a whole separate lesson on this. And so when I mentioned it in the open discussion, Brother Shakara, I was doing it in passing because I just wanted to, highlight the similarity between the error correcting codes and the fundamental four leg, I should say, or these digits. So we know in computer science that when we want to represent on or off in terms of flow of electricity through any of the gates, any of the transistors or logic gates, we represent that flow as ones and zeros, one being flow and zero being no flow, or one being on, off, and zero being off, right? So it's a binary system from which all fundamental aspects of the software and the hard coding of the computer is made. And so just like that, what you see in the EFI corpus, they call that in the universe odus. And so you see this representation of odus. So here is oyeku ogbe. And so you see this is completely on, all ones. And so instead of zeros, they have off represented as two strokes, parallel to each other. And so you see these same four, and you can combine them in different ways, just as you see on the Adinkra right here, as articulated in the article by Dr. Sylvester Gates. And so there's this. He also talks about this concept of it from bit, meaning reality from bit, from binary states. So in 1990, so this idea of it from bit comes from Dr. John A. Wheeler. He says in 1990 he suggested that every it, or everything, every particle, every field of force, even the space-time continuum itself, derives its function, its meaning, its very existence entirely from the apparatus elicited answers to yes or no questions, binary choices, bits. The it from bit principle, he continued, symbolizes the idea that every item of the physical world has at bottom an immaterial source and explanation. That which we call reality arises in that last analysis from the posing of yes or no questions and the registering of equipment evoked responses. In short, that all things physical are information theoretic in origin, and that this is a participatory universe. So he's going a little bit into philosophy, but we see this manifest in the very Adinkra codes, and of course in the Yoruba Ifa system in terms of Odu, what we call Odu, these same binary it from bit concepts. And so that's another aspect of Africans coming up with concepts that you find in modern astrophysics. And so I haven't even jumped on the Yoruba yet. We can have a whole year of this. So here's another combination of Odu Ifa, Iwori Edi, right? And so you see the Babalawo, marking the Odu on the Upon tray here, in SU at the head right here. And he's holding some cola nuts in his hand, about to drop, some information directly from the universe itself. So we're not even gonna get on Kepler right now and evolution and what that means. I want to get too deep because then I'll be here all day, and I got to get ready for work in a little bit. So let me just stop sharing the screen, and so hopefully, you know, uh, what I presented is enough to get a lot of you interested in understanding African cosmologies on a very fundamental and real level. And for some of you, probably even smaller fraction of that number, may be also interested just in modern science and cosmology. So one of the reasons why I comb through African cosmologies and stories and knowledge systems and wisdom traditions is to encourage African people to get involved in the sciences by understanding that your ancestors have always participated in the scientific discussion and dialogue and hypotheses of the world. And that at a time they, the growth of African science has been arrested as a result of the transatlantic slave holocaust and the Arab slave trade and the subsequent division and colonialism of European and Asian powers. And so if you understand that you've always been doing science, it's not a thing for you to jump back in it today and to make major contributions in into the sciences. So we use the African foundations to build upon, and let's test some of these hypotheses that the Africans came up with, and let's see where that leads us in the future and in terms of the forward flow of humanity. So with that said, this is why it's important for the contributions and the that y'all have been providing for us in regards to the upcoming film Chiena Into. And so this is the film that I am producing is to bring about these points in a very creative and digestible and entertaining way, so that not only will the future be able to understand the relationship between ancient Egypt and Bantu cultures in the way that I just did with Kalunga and Atum, but that these aspects of the conversation can be brought out too. So when we talk about these cosmologies, that's why the book is titled Quantum Mechanics, or Quantum Field Theory, I should say, as African Inheritance. We've been talking about quantum physics. That's a conversation that started with us thousands of years ago. And so it was not introduced to us by Europeans or any others. And so we can continue and build upon that legacy and make a lasting contribution. So you can do that, by going to the website, chienaintofilm.com, and you can, make a donation. We are going to Egypt in February, on February the 18th. And while I am there, I will be shooting some of the B-roll footage. I may have to go back at a later time to do the major shooting. But we'll be doing some small interviews and some of the B-roll shooting in Egypt when I go in February with the Aket Tour and the Hoppy documentary film crew. And so, what I'm trying to raise $5,000, and so far, let me go to the website now. I think we just hit over the $2,000 mark, and so I'm very appreciative and humbled by each and every one of you who have made contributions to the funding, of the first. This is phase one of the fundraising process. So, this is the website here, chienaintofilm.com. And as you can scroll from the first page, you see the full trailer. You saw kind of the first part, just the musical intro, but the full trailer explaining everything is on the home page. It'll tell you how to support the project, and then you can make a donation here. So far, there's been 23 donors, and $2,016 have been raised. And so when you click this button here, it gives you a breakdown of what is happening and the process and what we're going to be doing and what your contribution will contribute to. And it gives the list. You can make an anonymous donation. So you see some people are anonymous, and I'll be adding more stuff to the conversation. I may even add this video here to the website, and we'll be able to expand. So whatever you can contribute to help me in this first phase is greatly appreciated. We see the gallery and a few photos here, and so I'll be expanding and completing this site in very fundamental ways in the very near future. So um, thank each and every one of you who has donated thus far, and so you can go to Chiena into film again.com to make a contribution and to learn more about the film and what's going to happen. And these type of discussions is the very reason, the quintessential reason why we're even having the film made. Because if we don't tell our stories, it will never be told in the way that it needs to be told. So only when competent researchers and creatives get together and put in their efforts to uh, tell our story in a very, again, unique, fun, entertaining, but informative fashion, then this information won't spread. So consider donating if you can. And all donations, no matter what size, is greatly appreciated. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. So with that said, I do appreciate each and every one of you for listening. Please share and keep the conversation going. If you have any questions, put it um, in the comments below, and or you can visit my website at asarimhotep.com, and go to the contact page and send me an email there, and I'll be happy to answer any and all questions when I have the opportunity. Don't forget to like this video, and y'all continue to stay safe in these internet streets. Love each and every one of y'all. God bless y'all. Good day. Hotep.